If you debate creation versus evolution for long enough, at some stage Noah's flood will come up. Often the arguments against Noah's flood are, to be frank, woefully ignorant and uninformed, easily answerable with even the smallest amount of Googling. And so I was intrigued to hear YouTuber Jaclyn Glenn's thoughts about this when I saw her new video on the topic. And let me tell you, there was no shortage of debatable material. 2 minutes into the video, Jaclyn comes up with her first argument against Noah's flood.
The Bible said that the floodwaters were enough to cover the mountains, and Mount Everest is roughly 29,000 feet, so that's a lot of water. Where did it come from? Well, fortunately for us, the Bible was nice enough to give an answer to this question. They have the waters of the heavens and the waters of the deep divided by the firmament in the sky. Yep, that's right, they think Earth is a giant snow globe floating in water.
Ridiculing is no argument. In fact, creationists say that most of the water from Noah's flood came from underground, which was possibly released by the tectonic upheaval.
And then we have to think about geographic distribution, which presents two issues. All the animals traveling from all around the world, conveniently in pairs of two and getting on the ark without fighting or anything bad happening. And then after the flood was over, traveling mass expanses of land back to their original habitats.
Okay, Jaclyn. Had you done your research, you'd know that the pre-flood world was most certainly not the same as it looks today. So you can't apply today's world and its geographical distribution as an argument against the viability of all the animals entering the ark. Next, Jaclyn includes a few clips from her newfound friend, Richard Dawkins.
Why would all those marsupials, but no placentals at all, have migrated en masse from Mount Ararat to Australia? Which route did they take?
I can't think of anyone who actually cares which route the animals took. It hardly matters.
Why did not a single member of their straggling caravan pause on the way and settle in India perhaps, or China, or some haven along the Great Silk Road?
Numerous theories exist as to why marsupials only live in Australia, such as placentals and marsupials are the same created kind due to the striking similarity between them, or man introduced marsupials to Australia, or perhaps marsupials migrated the fastest to Australia just before the continent was cut off by rising sea levels. In other parts of the world, the few marsupials left were replaced by placentals. Evolutionists also have problems. For example, why are marsupials and placentals so similar if they evolved separately? The answer, of course, is that's just the way it happened. No good reason given, evolution did it.
Where the hell is he gonna get all this food? 2 elephants need 365,000 pounds of food and 36,000 gallons of water. Giraffes need 54,750 pounds of food. Hippos need 65,000.
Many of today's carnivores, including dogs, lions, tigers and more, can eat vegetation. In fact, one lion lives almost exclusively on spaghetti. But if it was absolutely necessary to bring meat on board the ark, Noah could have brought on salted meat, reconstituted dry meat, or fresh meat from fodder animals such as the tortoise. Of course, many animals might have hibernated, drastically reducing food and water needs. But assuming that animals didn't hibernate, the total dry matter intake of the ark would have been 1,990 tons. So, if the food on the ark averaged at 80% dry matter, there would be a total of 2,500 tons of food. Therefore, only 6 to 12% of the ark was used for food storage for 371 days.
It seems kind of impossible to fit all the food on the ship, much less all the animals, which includes 17,400 birds, 9,000 mammals, 12,000 reptiles, 5,000 amphibians, and 2 million insects.
When the anti-creationist cites numbers like Jaclyn's, you know he hasn't done his research. You see, Noah didn't take all the species on board the ark. No, he took all of the biblical kinds of animals, which are much broader than a species in definition. The generally accepted number of animals on the Ark is 16,000 animals, or 8,000 kinds, as per generous calculations. As for the insects, there were probably much less than 2 million, since we are talking about kinds, not species. Many of them may have survived on floating log mats and the like.
Well, now we have to think about altitude, because we rose to at least 29,000 feet to cover Mount Everest. So we're going to try to not freeze to death at this point. That's pretty damn high. At least the animals are going to have a difficult time breathing.
You are wondering how I'm going to get out of this home run of an objection. How does this sound? Mount Everest didn't even exist during the flood. You see, the vast majority of mountains and valleys formed as a result of the tectonic upheaval at the end of the flood.
Then we have to think about all the different variations of sea life that are just going to die. First of all, the sunlight's not going to get deep enough in the water for the plants, so the fish and all the other aquatic life aren't going to have nutrients. They're going to die. Salt water and fresh water are going to mix. Sorry if that's offensive to Islam, but in fact it does mix. So then all the fish are going to die and all the different, it's just ridiculous. Everything's going to die.
Jaclyn, over 95% of fossils are marine invertebrates. So yes, a lot of sea life did die. That was the very point of the flood. But of course, not all the Earth experienced huge upheaval enough to exterminate sea life, so some would of course survive.
They're going to have a pretty far journey to get back to their natural habitats. Like I said, the marsupials are going to have to travel all the way back to Australia. That's a pretty long way to go without anything to eat.
Yeah. As soon as the flood ended, animals quickly started migrating to their homelands. No, they're going to stick around where the food is. Then later, they start to move.
The only way to prevent everything from going extinct is through lots and lots of incestual inbreeding. That's the only way to prevent it from happening. Because there's nothing that could ever go wrong with that, like severe genetic defects, because that's not a problem.
The flood was only 2,000 years after the creation, and so inbreeding would not have been a problem since genetic degradation hadn't occurred enough to make it one.
There's so many different flood myths. There goes Christianity plagiarizing from other religions yet again.
Compared to the other flood accounts, like Gilgamesh's cubed ark, the biblical one is by far the closest to reality. So, if anything, they copied from the biblical account. But I contend that they all simply recorded an event that actually took place, just like there are many books today about World War II.
The Indians had a flood myth, the Babylonians, the Greeks, the Incans, the Chinese, almost everyone had a flood myth, so it's not surprising that the Hebrews also had a flood myth.
Well, if everyone has flood stories, don't you think that's evidence that the flood might have, happened?
The fact that 40% of Americans are biblical literalists is scary to me. They think that's real. After everything I said, they're still gonna think it's real.
Well, maybe it's because people actually know how to get on the internet and research this stuff. What you've presented in this video, Jaclyn, is some of the most easy objections to the flood. They have answers everywhere if you bother to look them up. I thought this video might have some constructive criticism for Noah's flood that I would actually have to spend a bit of time to answer. But, well, let's just say I was disappointed. It's so frustrating when people like Jaclyn Glenn or the Thinking Atheist spread such uninformed nonsense, putting it bluntly. Now I do know that there are many other objections to the flood which YouTubers will be adding in the comment section. And yes, I do know that I have only scratched the surface in this video and there is much more to say about each point. But please, do me a favour. Research your objections before commenting. You might, just might, save some pride.